All right, people. Um, Welcome back to I believe, third episode of this wall charging unit with some tips and tricks here. What we got now is our holistic model with oversized basic surfaces or slab surfaces, as they are sometimes referred to. What we're going to do now is start to carve out the actual shape of this design. And I'm going to do so by start to round off these corners right here between the pink and the purple surface and the purple and the purple surface here and this corner here, that corner here. And after that, we're going to round off the edge around the entire thing. So let's turn off the shading and have a look at a very powerful tool, rounding off tool called multi-surface fillet and surface fillet. Go to the options box right there. And the way to use this is actually just clicking on the two surfaces that I want rounded off. You see that one turns pink and the other one turns yellow, and we get two arrows. And we want those arrows to point into the center of the radius, which they obviously are doing. If they come up the wrong way, you could always click on them to change the direction. But arrows should point into the center of the radius. And if I uncheck and check the auto update option here, I actually end up with a very nice rounding off of the surface. And please also note that the original surfaces have been trimmed already. That's due to the fact that I have trim type automatic on here. So when rounding off using the surface fillet, the surfaces do not need to be trimmed previous to using the tool, which is very nice. Let's have a look at some of the options in the options box. I'm going to press F5 here to look at it from the top view. And this actually looks very nice, but let's have a look at what options there are. So we have the section type here, where the first one is G0, chamfer, where it just chops off the corner like that. It can sometimes be useful, and then you can round off these sharp corners as well. Second one is G1 circular. This creates a circular rounding off, similar to what is done using the round tool, at least in the default setting. It works for smaller radii, but in this case, we don't get that ultra smooth transition that we want between the round and the surrounding surfaces. So if we move up here to tangent, it creates a rounding off as it is slightly smaller there. So I'm going to increase that radius maybe to 65 or something. And what we can see here is that this, the radius of this curve that we see here is smaller here on the top, and then it increases to create a smoother transition to this flat surface here and this flat surface here. This is called a lead-in radius. So that's G1 tangent. And the next option is G2 curvature. We're not going to get into the mathematics of that, but what it basically means is that it creates a super smooth transition between the basic surface and the round. It's not even visible, so that's a perfect transition right here and also here. But then you can play around with the actual shape of this round off. First of all, you can play around with the center radius, which is a radius measured at the center of the curve. In this case, since we're using curvature, I'm going to bring that down slightly and see what that does. Oops, something happened there. Oh, there we go. Maybe 56, something like that. If I'm happy with that, we can go out to the perspective view and have a look at what this actually looks like. I'm gonna pick these 3 surfaces involved in this operation and shade it up and then hide the model. And if we look now at the highlight of these surfaces, you cannot, or at least I can't, tell where this surface ends and the next one begins. If we go back, toggle model with query edit and click on this surface fillet, and we set it to, for instance, G1 circular, and do the same thing. So I'm gonna pick, oops, not that one, the 3 surfaces involved, shade them up, and get rid of the model. You can clearly see that there is something going on here, a slight shadow between our round surface and the, oh, here you can see clearly there's a very clear transition here between the round and this subsurface, which might be fine in some cases, but in other it's not. So I'm going to stick with my G2 settings there. So I go query edit on that surface and set it back to G2 curvature, radius 56. And if I'm happy with that, I can go on to the next surface by clicking next and click on this one and that one, and that should hopefully create a identical surface to this one. So if I go just build, they should look the same, and I believe they do. If I want to be 100 or 200% sure, I could always delete this one, take this one, mirror it over the symmetry plane and so on, but it's not necessary for now. So let's continue then with these 2 corners right here, and we'll do it the exact same way. I'm gonna get rid of that shading. So click on that one and that one, but in this case I want a smaller radius. I want the corner down there to be slightly sharper than this one. And if I'm happy with that, which I am, I click next and go with these 2 surfaces. And obviously I want the same radius and same settings. So I urge you to play around with this tool, the surface fillet tool, and see what that can do for you in terms of shaping your round offs and corners. It's, as I said, very powerful, and it usually works. There we go. So now we have the surrounding surfaces complete here. They're all being trimmed automatically, which is nice. What remains now for the basic shape of this is to trim off the top surface, but I forgot something. The surface fillet control does have construction history connected to it, which means if I have the history on all surfaces I used previously, I can go on and, for instance, lighten up the curves I used to create the original surfaces. So check this out. This is what it looks like, and you remember my rail curve, for instance, that I used here. So if I pick that CV for the curve and start moving it, it actually updates the entire design with my radii and so on around there. This is really neat, as long as you keep the history on. We'll play around with that after we've done our final surface fillet around this area here. So let's hide those curves and once more bring up the surface fillet tool. And this time we want to bring down the radius, and we can probably do with just a circular radius. So I'm going to bring that down to say 12 or something. And in this case, I can use multiple surfaces as once. I click that one and that one, and this one goes pink as well. So I continue clicking all the way around, and these all goes pink. And for the top surface, it detects that this is the one I want to round off to. So I get this one represented in yellow. Again, I want my arrows to point into my radius center, like so. If I go with auto update, it should then create a rounded surface all the way around here. And let's just see what we got now. I think we might have something nice here. And the beauty is that, again, the construction history follows this design. So if I bring out my curve and decide I want maybe this end to be slightly thinner, I can then manipulate the curve I use to create this surface. So if I move that one, bring it down slightly, it updates not only the Cornish gear, but also the round color going all the way around. So let's have a quick look at this one as well. Get rid of also the grid, like so. So this is what it looks like currently. Next episode, we're going to talk about split lines and what they do for your design. So sit tight.